talk today about, it really is one of the most powerful brachot that we make. When I eat an apple, I say, Borei Priyait, God who created the fruit of the tree. When you eat bread, Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, that God brings the bread out from the land. But every once in a while, you make this remarkable bracha, and just thanking Hashem for being right here, right now. Just this moment is a special moment, and I'm just grateful to Hashem that I'm alive at this moment. And that bracha is Shaykhian, that you've kept us alive. V'kiyamanu, you have sustained us. V'higiyanu, when we have arrived, lazman hazeh, we have arrived at this moment. It's an acknowledgement, a bracha that acknowledges the wonderful fact that I happen to be right here, right now. You understand? Which is an amazing idea. So, by way of introduction to the bracha, before we start going into the details of when you make the bracha and who makes it and in what context you make the bracha, right at the top of the sheet over here, there's a very beautiful idea from Pinei Halacha. Pinei Halacha is a book, contemporary book of halacha, written by a chap called Rav Eliezer Melamed. In fact, if you have a look over here, there are many of his books over here, and many of his books over there.
We have to complete Hebrew still.
Yes, so you'll find actually, so he has a section on brachot, and his introduction to the bracha of Shaykhian is a very powerful idea. And he says the importance of punctuating our lives at significant moments. I should put this on. Oh, sorry, people.
That's not problem.
Is that not going to avert? I hope. Did anyone hear anything I said until now?
Yeah.
Now you can hear better. Sorry, guys. Okay. So we say, Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. I'm thanking Hashem for being alive at this moment. And what I'm doing is, I'm punctuating my life, not like for the, sometimes there are huge events in your life, like a once in the lifetime. You have an event. I don't know what a once in the lifetime. You make aliyah. That's an amazing moment. Your bar mitzvah. Those are once in a lifetime experience. But let's say you eat your first lychee of the season, or you buy lychee. Lychee. There you go. It doesn't matter. Forget that. It's a fruit. Or you eat your first cherries or your first apricot of the season. It's not like a world-shattering event to have an apricot. But there's, that's why I haven't had apricots for months. In Israel, perhaps in contrast to other places, you can't get all fruits all year round. They're seasonal. So you can get, at the moment, it's watermelon season. So you can get a watermelon right now. In 6 months' time, there won't be any watermelons in Israel because it's not watermelon season. You follow?
What is the fig season in Israel? Figs.
Oh, I think figs might be all year round.
Oh, yeah.
True, I've got actually no idea. I might have made that up.
It might also be other times.
Okay, so yes.
If a sports team were to win its first championship ever, will they ever have to say Shaykhian?
That's such an excellent question. So we're going to talk about when you would make Shaykhian and when you would not make Shaykhian. That's not one of the classical categories for making Shaykhian. But the point of Shaykhian, and this is really, really important.
At the same time, making with a suit, you make a Shaykhian for the first time you ever wear it. Now, if you're gonna, it's not like this is your first suit you ever buy. It's not like it's gonna be the only time you're gonna ever wear it or anything and all that. You're gonna wear it after again, but it's like the first time you're gonna ever wear it.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, when you win a championship for the first time, it's not like it's gonna only be a once in a lifetime thing. It's the first time it ever happens.
Yes, I think
like more glorious than any other one.
Yes, I think the truth is, at the end of our share today, we're going to talk about when you do not make Shaykhian, and you don't make Shaykhian whenever you are excited, meaning that's not a good reason to make, any moment. There are defined moments, 3 main categories that we're going to look at in a few minutes, but the important point is that the Bracha of Shaykhian allows me to punctuate quite a mundane existence with moments of excitement and recognizing that that's an exciting thing. You follow? Putting on a new shirt is something I might take for granted. Buying a new pair of glasses is something you could take for granted. But then sometimes when I acknowledge that's a great blessing that I was able to do that. So I'm acknowledging that moment with the bracha of Shaykhian, and it allows me to punctuate what might be an otherwise mundane experience, and allows me to take these moments and to give them a little bit of weight, give them a bit of significance, and allow me to pause and express gratitude that I was able to be here at this moment. Does that make sense? That's really the idea, explains Rav Melamed, the idea of the bracha of Shaykhian, and it's critical. You know, nowadays, I mean, this is off topic, but I'll mention briefly. You know this. You know, nowadays we have more, this generation, we got more than like any generation before us. This is over here, this is called like a mobile phone. So this phone can do stuff that you couldn't even dream of like 10 years ago. And everyone's got, I mean, you know, Baruch Hashem, we all have phones like this, and you know, we have access to things that people couldn't have dreamt of 20 years ago, and yet people aren't always happy, which is a shame. So this bracha of Shaykhian allows me to pause and to experience and to express gratitude for like these little things that happen once in a while that I might pass by and may not acknowledge and appreciate and feel the appropriate amount of, you know, satisfaction and joy were it not for the bracha of Shaykhian. You follow? So it's always been important. I would say it's even more important today than it ever was before. Joy, happiness, comments, thoughts? Joy?
So, is there
Michael.
an imperative? Is there like a time when you have to say it, like it's a
Yeah.
chiyuv? And
So,
then
yeah,
there are other times where it's just sort of if you want to.
correct. There are really three categories that we're going to look at now. And we're going to look at each category for a few minutes. The first category is a category where everybody says Shaykhian. The first category is sort of mandated. It's written in the Shulchan Aruch. The second type, there are different customs. Some people do and some people don't. And the third category is very, very subjective. You know, you can have two people doing the same thing, and one person will make Shaykhian and the other one wouldn't. So there's sort of three categories that reflect what you were saying. If you have a look over here, I think I even put it in English over here. So the truth is, the reason why we're studying the bracha of Shaykhian now is for two reasons. First of all, I'm very grateful. I feel we should all be saying now, Shaykhian v'kimanu v'gianu lazman hazeh. It's such an honor and a pleasure to learn together here at Machon Meir. Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all be well. We should all enjoy it. It should be productive for all of us. But to acknowledge this important moment as you embark on a career in a yeshiva is a huge milestone in all of our lives. And so to just say Shaykhian for this moment right now, is reason enough for us to start our halachic discussions with this particular topic. But more than that, there are lots of Shaykhianus in Chodesh Nisan. There are lots of mitzvot, seasonal mitzvot. A seasonal mitzvah is a mitzvah that's done less than once a month. So it's normally once a year, these sorts of mitzvot. But whenever you have a mitzvah that you do less than once a month, so then you say Shaykhian, and there are lots of stuff. Obviously, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot, will have many opportunities to make Shaykhian. And in fact, the first category of Shaykhian is performing a seasonal mitzvah. Rosh Hashanah, Kiddush on Rosh Hashanah, we make Shaykhian. Yom Kippur, we make Shaykhian. There is no Kiddush on Yom Kippur. If somebody is eating on Yom Kippur and they make Kiddush, they would say Shaykhianu at their Kiddush. But we say Shaykhianu right before Ma'ariv. Ashkenazim do that, but you have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, we say Shaykhianu. Shmini Atzeret is another separate Chag Shaykhianu. Pesach, Shavuot, we all make Shaykhianu on that. Then you make another Shaykhianu when you blow the first shofar, when you shake a lulav, when you light your Hanukkah lights, when you read the Megillah, when you eat a matzah. So anytime you do a seasonal mitzvah, it is mandated to make a Shaykhianu. This isn't a Shaykhianu that you make out of choice. This is a Shaykhianu that Chazal fixed for us all to make. First night Rosh Hashanah is a big moment. We're all going to acknowledge the fact that we are here celebrating Rosh Hashanah by saying Shaykhianu. First night sitting in a sukkah is a moment. Seder night is a moment. So we acknowledge all these moments universally with a Shaykhianu. That's the first category of Shaykhianu. Joy? Questions? Excellent. Josh, how are you doing? Josh, by saying people's names, I just remember them better. Okay, that's the first category. The second category is if you, a seasonal fruit. If you have a seasonal fruit for the first time in that season. And that is, let's say, you know what seasonal fruit are. In America, you may not get so much, because can you get everything all year round? The perception in Israel is that in America, you can get everything all the time. Not that that's a good thing, but that's the perception. In Israel, that's not the case. In Israel, right now, you can't get any apricots. Could you get an apricot now in LA?
Probably.
Really, Hashem Yirachem. But here you can't, because it's a seasonal fruit. So that would justify making Shaykhianu. So that's important, because let's say I live in America, and I mean apricots have been on the shelf all year round, and I just haven't eaten one for a while. So I wouldn't make a Shaykhianu on that apricot, because I mean I could have had it last week or 2 weeks ago. It's not that they've reappeared for the new season. But if I live in a place where they're not available all year round, they weren't available, I couldn't have eaten one a month ago, and now I can, then I would say Shaykhianu. Yes.
What about on you haven't seen your mom for like a year or something?
Oh my gosh, you're such a
I saw
Rebbe.
that if you haven't seen your friend in 30 days, you're allowed to say Shaykhianu.
Oh my gosh, Chaim, you are such a Rebbe. That is so holy. So the truth is, you're quite right. If you haven't seen somebody for 30 days, you say Shaykhianu, but we nowadays don't do that. Because I think there was a time when meaning there was no communication. And then I know, it's a horrible thing to say, but you weren't quite sure if you'd have the honor of seeing this person again, because you were really out of touch.
But now we do have communication.
Yeah, now
know that they're there.
Right, so it's a little bit like the apricot in New York, because I could eat an apricot all year round. So therefore, even if I haven't eaten it for a while, I'm not going to say Shaykhianu, because I could have eaten it a while ago. Now, same with the phone. I may not have spoken to them for a while, but I could have. The fact I didn't is just because I didn't lift up my phone. But I could have. There's no one really that I couldn't communicate with them. You thought that they were really out of contact. There was no way to be in touch with them.
What about a friend you haven't seen for 12 years?
Again, all of these things, it just happens to be that I'm not a very communicative person. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ezra. What would we... Can't imagine this year without you. Anyway, so in that situation, I just happened not to have contacted this person for 12 years, but I could have done. So therefore, that would not justify making a Shaykhianu.
What if they're the type of person who off the grid? They don't have a phone. They live worlds away, and you just haven't seen them in 10 years, and then you see them.
Yeah, so you're right. There could be a situation. You're right. There could. In general, that's not the case. But
with the exception, you would make a Shaykhianu?
Absolutely, yeah. If you were in a situation where you were out of contact with them, then you would make Shaykhianu. Meaning you were in full, there was no way that you could have been in contact in the meantime. Okay. Joy. Okay, that's category number 2. So we have the first category, everybody makes it. First night Rosh Hashanah, the world will make Shaykhian. The second one, the seasonal Shaykhian, it depends a little bit. If you like apricots, so then you'll make Shaykhian. If somebody doesn't, they just won't make that Shaykhian. It really depends a little bit on, where you are and which fruit you're buying. You follow? In general, we make Shaykhian for fruit that are seasonal, but you wouldn't make a Shaykhian on a vegetable. Because the vegetables were there all the time. They were just under the ground. I just needed to lift it from under the ground. Let's say an apricot appears on it. The apricots fruit are visible. So when I see the first fruit, there's an excitement. Now I may not have seen a vegetable for a while, because they also, they don't grow all the time, vegetables, but they were there. They were just under the ground. So it's different. Therefore, you don't make Shaykhian on vegetables. Okay. Now the third category, and this is really what we were speaking about earlier, and that is if you acquire something of value, like a new item of clothing. Now there, it depends quite a bit on the amount of benefit you're getting from that article. Now, as opposed to categories number 1 and 2, which are objective, anyone who eats an apricot for the first time makes a Shaykhian. But the third category, this one over here, is subjective. People that are excited would make Shaykhian. People that aren't excited because they buy jackets, they buy suits every Monday and Thursday, so they would not make Shaykhian. So you could have one guy buying a second-hand jumper, a second-hand sweater, and they're over the moon. This is the most excited thing in their world, and they would make a Shaykhian because of the excitement of this new item of clothing. And you have somebody else that could be buying the most expensive suit, because they do that every week. There's no excitement there. The third category is more subjective. There's also a bracha, a Shaykhian, that's more like the fruit, and that is on special events. We make a Shaykhian in Israel. Everybody makes a Shaykhian on a Brit Milah. In Chutz La'aretz, Sfaradim make a Shaykhian, but Ashkenazim do not make a Shaykhian.
Let's say someone buy a house or a new car or a new
Yes, quite right. Exactly the same.
Okay.
Exactly the same. Yes, new car, new house. Yeah, all the same. You would make Shaykhian. Absolutely. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at halakha. We're going to look at these 3 categories inside the Sifrei Halakha. After summarizing, there are a few interesting points in the Rambam and in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, the truth is, I'm going to jump now. We're going to miss out the first section. The second section, when to recite Shaykhian. And we're going to read a very interesting little piece of Gemara. The Gemara says, do you see at the bottom of the first page is a Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Mem Amud Bet, which I do believe was the Daf Hayomi just a few days ago. Oh, he's not here. We have one boy here in doing the Daf, but he's not here. Okay. Can you see it's Omar Rava? Rabba taught. Ki havinon bei Rav Huna. When we went to the house of Rav Huna, Ibayalan, he asked us, Ma'u lomar zman b'Rosh Hashanah v'Yom HaKippurim. Do we say Shaykhian v'kimanu v'kiyanu lazman hazeh on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Kivan de mizman lezman ati amrinan. O Dilma kivan de lo ikru regalim lo amrinan. Do we say that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we do say Shaykhianu, or we don't say Shaykhianu? Now, we're not going to go into this debate now. We do say Shaykhianu, that is the conclusion. The second part of the Gemara is what I wanted to look at over here. He says, Ki atai bei Rav Yehuda. When I went to the house of Rav Yehuda, Amar, Ana, he says, Ana akra chadata nami aminazman. He says, when I see a new, this is dalat. Dalat is a pumpkin. when I see the new pumpkin from the pumpkin season, I say Shehechianu. Now, Rashi on that explains, when do you say the Shehechianu on the new fruit? Rashi at the bottom of the page says that you say Shehechianu. When I see a new fruit, I underlined it. Rashi says that you say Shehechianu kashani ro'eh. So when I go to the shop and I see my new fruit, you go to the shop and you see, oh wow, the cherries are back. Oh, this is exciting, there are peaches here. Oh, this is my first lychee, or my first whatever fruit it is. So when I go to the shop and you see the shelves full again, that's when you make Shehechianu, because that's the excitement of seeing the new fruit. That's the opinion of Rashi. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. However, if you go to the next page, the Balei Tosafot on the elsewhere say, Kol pri chadash, when you have a new fruit, keshe ochlo, when you eat it, you make shehechianu. So the Balei Tosafot seem to suggest that you make the shehechianu not the moment that you see the new fruit, but the moment that you eat the new fruit. And really the question is, it's a lovely question, like what's the exciting moment? Is the exciting moment the moment that you see the fruit on the shelves? Or is the exciting moment when you take your bite?
Eat it.
Huh?
I would say eat it, because you're trying something new for the first time.
Oh, very nice. Excellent. So that's Balei Tosafot, that's exactly what they say. It's not about buying, it's about the moment of eating. Now, if you look at the Shulchan Aruch, which is the next source on this page, is very cautious in his writing. He seems to follow Rashi. Do you see that? Haro'eh, do you see? It's on the second page, the top of the page. I'm going to read this, because Ezra, you are quite correct in what you say, that, and certainly what the general custom is nowadays, that most people say Shehechianu when they eat the fruit for the first time. But if you have a look at the Shulchan Aruch over here, it's not so clear cut that that's what you should do. He says, Haro'eh pri chadash, mitchadesh mishana l'shana. When you see a new fruit that's a seasonal fruit and is now back in season, mivarech shehechianu, you make shehechianu. He goes even further. Afilu ro'eu biad chaviro or al ha'ilon. Now he says, even if I'm not even buying it, let's say I walk into the shop and I see all of the cherries, or I go and visit my friend and in his house there are cherries, even if I don't eat it, I'm celebrating the fact that it's cherry season. You follow? And therefore, I'm not even making a bracha on my cherry, I'm making a bracha on cherry season. I don't need to eat the cherry in order to make shehechianu on the cherry. Is that crazy? That is, I'm reading from the Shulchan Aruch, what you can see is based on Rashi, based on the story of Rabbi Yehuda, who said that you make the bracha of shehechianu when you see the new fruit. You follow? Now this is very interesting, because even though Shulchan Aruch is very much strongly talking about the seeing, look what he says over here, v'nahagu. But the custom is, lo levarech ad sha'at achila. You should make the bracha not when you eat it. But if you make the bracha when you see it, that's fine. But you shouldn't make the bracha until the fruit is ripe. Now, if I see cherries on the tree, cherries grow on trees. They do, cherry tree. In England, there are lots of nice cherry trees. If you see a cherry on a cherry tree, and you forgot to make shehechianu, but then the next day you go back to the cherry tree, you can make shehechianu on the second sighting. It doesn't have to be on the first sighting, but it's as long as you're still excited by this. Now this is quite interesting, because the Shulchan Aruch seems to really support the position that shehechianu is about seeing the fruit much more than it is about eating the fruit. You hear that?
people think about it when people go shopping and they see this new thing. That's the exciting moment. So I guess it depends on the person how they think about food. It's either if they focus more on eating with their eyes, so to speak, or the shopping experience of going to the market, or sitting down at the table and actually eating what they bought.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's like, what's the exciting moment? At what moment because really Shaykhian is saying, it's another year. I'm thankful to Hashem for giving me life to be back this season. So at what stage am I acknowledging the fact that I'm right here, right now? So really, it's about seeing. Because it's not a bracha, it's not a birukat hanehenin. I'm not making a bracha on eating a particular item. Really, the excitement, like with clothes, is not the excitement of eating. It's the excitement of being here at this moment, that this is the season. You follow? Now, the eating experience is only a result, but really it's much more about being there. You know what I mean? But I'll tell you what, the Aruch HaShulchan, I don't know whether this works a little bit. It's it could be a little bit to do with the Industrial Revolution. And that, what I mean by that is that I think that we are today more divorced from the field. Meaning, when I think fruit and vegetables, if you think apple and you close your eyes, you either look in your fridge or you look at a shop. But very few of us think tree. You know what I mean? Meaning the context for me now of an apple is a supermarket or my fridge. But the context for an apple, really, I mean, maybe you know this, I assume you do, is really a tree. But part of the reason why we make the bracha nowadays, like Ezra said, is on the eating rather than on the seeing, is because I don't experience the cherry on the tree. I experience the cherry on my plate. You follow? So even though traditionally, and perhaps more accurately, like the Shulchan Aruch and Rashi said, it's about seeing the cherry or the apricot, whatever it is. It's about seeing it on the tree and experiencing the season. I experience the season today in the market or in the supermarket or in my fridge. And therefore it's more about eating. Isn't that a sad reflection? I'm so sorry. But that's halakha is adapted.
They did a survey in schools in America about, they asked kids where they think milk comes from. And I don't know the percentage exactly, but a large percentage said the supermarket.
Isn't that terrible?
It is, yeah.
So it's terrible. So the Aruch HaShulchan really says what we just read just now. The Aruch HaShulchan lived 100 years ago, right? He lived about 100 years ago in Europe. And the Aruch HaShulchan is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch was written by Rav Yosef Karo, and that was written about 400 years ago. And it is like a digest, is that the word? A digest of really the bottom line halakha. There's a lot to say about the Jewish bookshelf, but that's what it's. And then, so bottom line halakha, about 400 years ago, written here in Israel, in Tzfat. And the Aruch HaShulchan is but it follows the index of the Shulchan Aruch, and then really adds further halachic positions since the time of the Shulchan Aruch, about 300 years later. So the Shulchan Aruch, which we just read 400 years ago, where everyone seemed to be in the field, and therefore the Shaykhian was on seeing the fruit, and then 100 years ago, the fruit have moved from the tree to the shop, as it were, and he writes like that: B'dorot harishonim hayu tmimei derech v'samchu b'riyat pri chadash. Yeah.
What happens if someone were to buy a new ring?
A new who?
Ring.
Ring?
Ring. R-I-N-G.
You mean like for your finger?
Yeah.
So yeah, with the general, we make a Shaykhianu on new clothes and new fruit. Those are the things that people... No.
Okay.
Those are the things that you would generally make Shaykhian on. What sometimes people do is... I'll just tell you a very sweet story. I'll tell you a sweet story. It's a beautiful story, actually. My wife's brother is an incredibly special person. A very, very holy person. And a few years ago, after many years of this not happening, all of the family were together for a Shabbat. Like Baruch Hashem, their parents, all of the siblings' spouses, and all of the grandchildren. And we're all standing around at this Shabbat table. The first time the family had been together for a couple of years, and he felt this was a moment for Shaykhian. I want to acknowledge to Hashem that we are able to share this moment together, right? But Shaykhian is not a bracha. Whenever I feel I'm at a significant moment, I can't just whip out the bracha Shaykhian. What I do is, at a moment like this, and for a ring you could do the same thing, you buy a new fruit. And you buy a new tie, or you buy something on which you are required to make a Shaykhian. And then once you're making the Shaykhian on this item, you then extend the Shaykhian on the whole event. You follow? So you're working within the halachic system. I'll give you another example, what many people do. There's no Shaykhian at a wedding. Like the chuppah ceremony does not include Shaykhian. Now, if there's any moment I want to recognize that I'm here at this moment, it's when I'm standing under my chuppah. I want to say, thank you Hashem for bringing me at this moment at this time. But in the rubric of Shaykhian, it's not a new fruit, and it's not a new item of clothing. So therefore, it wouldn't justify making Shaykhian. So what people do is, what many people do, they buy a talit. Many people do not wear a talit before they get married, or if they were wearing one before they get married, the wife normally says it's not, you have to buy a new talit. This is a new stage of your life. So then you have this new talit, and it's a new item of clothing. It's a very warm, four-cornered garment. So I put on this garment called a talit under the chuppah, and I say Shaykhian on this new item. But of course, when I'm saying the bracha of Shaykhian on this four-cornered item, I'm also saying Shaykhian on the marriage as well. So whenever there's a situation that I'm in, and I would like to acknowledge this moment with Shaykhian, but this moment doesn't justify in itself a Shaykhian. It's not Rosh Hashanah, it's not Yom Kippur, it's not a Sukkot, it's no new fruit or new clothing. So what people do is that you bring in an apricot, and then say Shaykhian on the apricot, or you wear a new tie, or you buy something that would allow you to make Shaykhian on that item, and that would extend. So that would work, for example, if you bought jewellery, and you're very excited about your jewellery, so you make the Shaykhian in that way. Does that make sense? Okay. Now I want to... Yes, Josh.
Instrument, like you're going to derive significant benefit from acquiring like a guitar, or like a
signature model, autographed
piano.
Guitar.
This is a guitarist, this guy here, do you know? Do you play guitar too?
Yeah.
Oh, like you can jam together. That's a very good question, because it's very hard to define this significant pleasure business. In general, the halakhic authorities have limited it quite to items of clothing and fruit. I imagine because at the time of the Talmud, those were the two parts of life that could really give me pleasure. But there are lots of other things that give me pleasure as well. So what I would do is I would latch it onto one of the other. I think it has to be a new item of clothing or a new fruit. But if there's something else that gives me significant joy, like my wedding day or a guitar, whatever you would it sounds like an amazing guitar, whatever you're describing there, and that gives me significant joy, and I want to acknowledge that moment. I would acknowledge that moment through, buying a new shirt on that day and then say Shaykhian as a package, rather than, I don't think these items would be able to justify a Shaykhian on themselves. The third category, as I think you're realizing, is the most complicated category. The first one, the category of first day Rosh Hashanah, shaking a lulav, eating a matzah, those are very, very fixed. There's nothing flexible about them. The entire Jewish world will make Shaykhian together when we sit in the sukkah on the first night of Sukkot. There's no flexibility there. Fruit, there's some flexibility because either you bought the fruit or you didn't buy the fruit. Either you live in a seasonal sort of environment or you don't. But assuming that I'm in a seasonal environment and I'm having the fruit, then I would make the bracha. The third category, which is a new item, that's more complicated. And that's more, that's where it gets far more subjective. And you normally need to have a package deal. If I'm experiencing this excitement to open my new guitar, or even let's say coming to the Machon is an exciting moment. Like the honor of coming to learn here in Israel, I would like to acknowledge this by saying Shaykhian. So I would go to the shuk here and look for a fruit item that I haven't, a seasonal item that's become and then I would make a Shaykhian, and that would, that would include everything. That makes sense? Okay, I just want to finish our trees business we spoke about how in the Shulchan Aruch I would make Shaykhian on seeing the cherry on the tree. Nowadays we don't make the bracha on seeing it on the tree. I make Shaykhian when I see it on my plate. And that transition is such a painful transition, sort of away from nature, into a more sort of urban environment, industrialized inside. So the Aruch HaShulchan recognizes that. I think, isn't it brilliant about how the halachic ramifications of industrialization? So he says like this, B'dorot HaRishonim, I'm on the third source on the back page. Aruch HaShulchan, B'dorot HaRishonim, in the earlier generations, Shayu Tmimei Derech, V'samchu B'riyat Pri Chadash, V'nadnu B'libam, Toda L'Hashem Atuva V'chasdol B'chol HaOlam, L'chein hayu yicholim levarech al ha're'iyah. In those days, they were Tmimei Derech, it was a simpler world, and they got pleasure by, gazing out of their window, looking at the orchards and seeing the trees filling up with their seasonal fruit. And that moment of ripe fruits in my orchards, I could acknowledge that by making a bracha of Shaykhian. Nowadays, Masha Enkin Anachnu, Eina Simcha Nikeret Eslenu, Ele B'shat Hana'at Haguf Beita Achila. I enjoy my cherry, not by gazing over my cherry grove, but when I'm tachlis eating the cherry. And therefore, painfully, I make the bracha at the time that I'm eating it, rather than the time that I see it. You follow?
But then you can extend the bracha as well, which is nice.
Huh?
Then you can extend the bracha.
What do you mean?
Like what we were talking about, where then you could buy a seasonal fruit,
Yeah.
save it for that Shabbat.
Oh, you're quite right. You genius. You're absolutely right. You're right. I've now got this. You're right. You're absolutely right. Nowadays, we have an opportunity to harness the power of Shaykhian to wider situations. Because in the olden days, I couldn't take my ring or my jewelry into the orchard and make a bracha there, because it was when I saw it. But nowadays I've got this portable Shaykhian option. Excellent point, Chaim. Yes. Now, finally, just as a halachic ruling, there's a lovely book that talks about the laws of brachot, and it is suitably called V'zot HaBracha. Laws of Brachat. It's a contemporary book written by a Jew who lives here in Jerusalem, I believe, and it's quite a thick book, a thick volume, all about just bracha. So there's like a chapter on shakol, on mezonot, on hamotzi, etc., and then obviously a chapter on on our bracha, which is Shechianu v'kimanu v'gianu l'zman hazeh, and he suggests something. A sort of not a compromise, but an accurate halachic way to make Shaykhian. And he says, what you do is, you should, let's say, go back to our cherries. So we said in the olden days, I'd make a blessing on the cherry when I see it rather than when I eat it. Nowadays, the pleasure is eating it. But when I eat the cherry, in what order should I make the brachot? Should I make ha'etz and then Shaykhian, or Shaykhian and then ha'etz? Do you understand the question? So V'zot HaBracha technically, and I would recommend this, you make the bracha of Shaykhian first. I look, I acknowledge, I admire, this cherry. Thank you, Hashem, for allowing me to be here for a cherry season. And then make borei pri ha'etz and I eat the cherry, which is somehow I'm aware of the original minhag of making the bracha on seeing it, but I'm applying it to the modern world in which I make the bracha when I eat it. You follow? Now, most people do it the other way around. They make ha'etz and then she'achianu. But really, writes V'zot HaBracha, the best way to do it is first to make she'achianu and then to make ha'etz, and we are keeping alive the echo of the original minhag. You follow? Does that make sense, everybody?
So this applies only to the Shaykhian on fruit, not to the first category of Chagim.
Everything we've been discussing is only on fruit. This whole discussion is only really on the Chagim. There's very little to say, because that's instituted. It's institutionalized. There's no debate on that at all. There's no, do I say Sheikhanu? Do I not say Sheikhianu? On that, there is no debate. There's only one important point, and this comes back to what Chaim was saying earlier about the portable Sheikhianu. The portable Sheikhianu, I'll tell you what we do in our home, where there is a problem. The problem is, as you may know, that it's not a problem, but it's a halachic situation. Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, right? But we treat it as one long day. But we make Sheikhianu on the first night of Rosh Hashanah, but we also make Sheikhianu on the second night of Rosh Hashanah. Now, how can I make Sheikhianu on the second night of Rosh Hashanah? I already made Sheikhianu on the first night of Rosh Hashanah.
Make Sheikhianu on both.
Exactly.
When you really did it on the first
Exactly. So
there's not much of a problem because we only keep 1 day, but in a Chutz La'aretz...
No, so it's a problem in Israel on Rosh Hashanah. It's a problem in Chutz La'aretz for every other Chag. Yeah, I mean, almost every other Chag.
I remember, when in the Haggadah, it says at the Kiddush, you make Sheikhianu for only the first 2 nights.
Correct. But why? How can I make Sheikhianu on the second night? So what we do is, and this is, we're going to call it Chaim's portable Sheikhianu. What we do, let's say in our home, what we do on the second night Rosh Hashanah, the seasonal fruit on Rosh Hashanah is pomegranates. In fact, if you look now on the trees, the pomegranates are just ripening now.
There's actually some in stores.
They're just coming into the stores now. So we don't eat any pomegranates until second night Rosh Hashanah. And then...
What do you do? There's a pomegranate section.
On the first night, I know. And then, I know it's a bit embarrassing. You're right, good point. But the reason why we do that is because I want to make Sheikhianu on the second night Rosh Hashanah, but I can't make Sheikhianu on the second night. I can't make it 2 nights running on the same activity, because it's, Sveka, I'm not sure which day is really Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is slightly different, but on the other Chagim, that is certainly the case. So some people buy a new item of clothing. We have this food item, and then I say Sheikhianu in Kiddush on the second night, and that Sheikhianu is also for the new fruit, and then when I eat the new fruit, I don't make Sheikhianu. You follow? Okay. That is exactly the idea of Sheikhianu. In fact, did I tell you the end of the story, what we did with my brother-in-law? So we wanted to make Sheikhianu. Did I tell you the story? So I finished the story. He wanted to make Shaykhian because all the family were together. But there, you can't make the Shaykhian at the end of the Kiddush, because if you were to have made Sheikh on that Friday night when we were all together, if you were to make Shaykhian at the end of the Kiddush, it would look like a Yom Tov Shaykhian. So you have to, you do the Shaykhian, but it can't be at the same point that you would normally do Shaykhian. You follow? Okay. Is everything clear until now?
So would he do it before Kiddush?
Yeah, so just out of the context of Kiddush.
Okay.
So you can either bang on the table, make Shaykhianu, and now we're going to do Kiddush, or when we're sitting down. But I think that's what he did. Sort of open the evening with a Shaykhianu on this fruit, and then after that he made her. Okay. Joy, any questions on what we said so far? I want to summarize what we said so far. There are three categories. The first category is there's really nothing to talk about. We all do it. The second category, the fruit, it really depends. It's objective. If you're in that situation, you make the Shaykhianu. And the third category, new items of clothing, is subjective because it really depends on your level of excitement. Okay. Now, the third thing to talk about is when do you not make Shaykhianu? So in order to, I'm just going to, because we're running out of time for our discussion, I'm going to go straight to the Shulchan Aruch, the second piece of Shulchan Aruch. Bana Bait Chadash, if somebody builds a new house, or Kana Kelim Chadashim, or bought a new items, like a new items of clothing.
Exactly, that's something that's not food or clothing.
Yeah, you're right. Good point. Afilu haya lo kiyot be'elu tchila, or kana v'chazar v'kana mevarech al kol pa'am she'achianu v'lav dafke chadashim tuadim leyishanim. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be new, but it has to be new for me. Imem chadashim lo shelo hayu she'elu shelo me'olam v'lo amru chadashim ela l'afuke im machran v'chazar u'kanaan. We're not talking about new items, but we're talking about items that are new for you. Now, concerning
A ring.
No.
How is it not new for you?
No, you're right. No, with the categories, it has to be a new. Yeah, I suppose, is a ring an item of clothing? It could be. You're not giving up, are you, on the ring?
No.
Ezra.
So basically, pretty much every single time you get a Super Bowl ring,
You what? Who?
Shaykhian on it.
I don't even know what that means. That's a good question. The truth is, if a ring is an item of clothing, then you would make Shaykhianu in it. That is the truth. So I take that back. Thank you, Ezra, for your persistence in asking your question. I think that
wear Super Bowl rings.
I don't know what that
People
is.
do.
Nobody wears their Super Bowl
Yes,
ring.
they do.
They keep it in like a trophy case.
No, they legit wear it all.
Wear their Super Bowl rings?
Yes. There's legit players on Instagram with their Super Bowl rings and everything, and all the championship rings, wearing it.
On Instagram, but they're not like
Even out in the world, they do.
people don't even wear their wedding bands anymore.
Oh, that's such a sad world. Okay, since I have no idea what either of you are talking about, we're going to have to move on.
When the American football, when the team that wins the championship at the very
Any
end,
sport.
they get these rings with it's like I don't even $20,000 at least. Like every player gets one of these rings.
Well, that's really nice.
It's like these crazy giant rings.
Okay.
Blinged out like crazy.
Shem Yerachim. So I have no idea what that would be.
Super American thing.
But if any of them, tell them to call. If anyone has a question, they're welcome to call me and I will look into it for them. Is that okay? So we'll leave it like that. But I suppose an item of jewellery, if it's clothing, I'm not sure if it's clothing. I don't know actually.
I think it would be
Concerning
considered
choosing.
clothing because you're allowed to wear it on Shabbat and it's not considered carrying.
Right.
So it would be
Yeah, so then you would say Shaykhianu. Okay, thank you for that. Now, when do you make the bracha on clothing? Do you buy it at the time that you buy it? Do you make Shaykhianu on the time that you buy it or the time that you wear it?
You wear it.
So Shulchan Aruch suggests, it's a bit like this seeing and he seems to suggest you make the bracha at buying it. You know, the moment of excitement that I'm here. It's like walking out the shop with those heavy bags. Anyway, so that moment is a moment of excitement. Like, 2 weeks later, when I'm just, shall I wear this? I'll wear this one. That's not the moment. The moment of excitement is a moment of buying. And therefore, he suggests you should make Shaykhian when you buy it. But I have to say, the custom nowadays seems to be much more about when you wear it, not when you buy it, even though in both situations, the Shulchan Aruch said you make the blessing on the fruit when you see it, but nowadays we make the bracha when we eat it. He says you make the bracha when you buy the clothing, but nowadays we make the bracha when we wear it. Okay, to conclude, when do we not make Shaykhian? I'm going to read from V'zot HaBracha, and this will be our last item. He says, Kayam Hevdel Yisodi. There is a big difference between Shaykhianu on new items of clothing and new fruit items. Al Peirot Chadashim, on new fruit, you make Shaykhianu, even if you're not that excited about it. Meaning, if I don't particularly like cherries, but cherries happen to be in season now, I make a bracha on the cherry. I don't need to be excited about the cherry. I just need to realize that it's now cherry season. You follow? So my level of joy is not relevant when it comes to fruit. What's relevant for fruit is this a seasonal fruit? And is this my first eating of that seasonal fruit this year? And if this is the first eating of that seasonal fruit this year, then I make Shaykhianu. The way that I care or don't care about that fruit isn't relevant. The only thing that's relevant is it new? You follow? That's fruit. When you buy a new item of clothing. She'ikar takanat habracha hi ala kelim chashuvim hagormim la simcha. There, buying the clothing, it's all about how I feel. It's all about me. It's all about, am I happy or not? Hadavar talui b'matzavo kalkali shel kol adam. So it depends on how well you're doing financially. If someone has limited financial means, then you be grateful for, really quite a simple item of clothing could give you immense joy. Because for you, in your situation, that's really the best of, sort of the most incredible thing. But if someone is with more financial means, so then they have to invest a lot more money in order to be happy. You follow? This is a rule. Kol shesamech v'akli chashuv. You need two things. You need to be happy, meaning it has to give you joy, and it has to be a kli chashuv. A kli chashuv means it has to be a significant item of clothing. So I don't know. Let's say, we call these vests undershirts, right? Let's say for the last 5 years, you've been wearing undershirts that are 2 sizes too small for you. And you're like, you can hardly breathe. And then you go to the shop and you buy 15 undershirts and they're all the right size. And this is, oh my God, it's like a mechaya. I can breathe again. So the joy in wearing this undershirt is huge. But it's not a kli chashuv. You follow? It's not just about the joy. It has to be, I need to be excited, and it has to be a significant item. You follow? So it has to be a shirt, a pair of shoes, a suit, a smart item of clothing. You wouldn't make Shaykhianu even if I'm incredibly excited about it, if it's on an undershirt. You follow? Even if it's giving me the greatest amount of joy in the world. It has to be 2 things. It has to be chashuv, and I have to be sameach. And if the item of clothing is chashuv, it's a significant item of clothing, and it gives me joy, then I would say Shaykhianu. Joy?
What makes clothing chashuv?
That's a very good... I think it's clothing that you would not... There's not everyday clothing. Like clothing that you would wear for an event. Like clothes you wear on Shabbat are kelim chashuvim.
So a tie would be considered.
Yeah, a tie could be a kli chashuv.
Also, several weeks ago, there was some hefker in Machon. It was some ties. Even though I didn't buy it, it's still like
you can say Shaykhianu. It's not about whether it's new or not new. Is it new to you? Now, if I owned a tie and then I sold it and then I bought it back, I wouldn't make Shaykhianu because it's not new for me. But something that I never owned and I now own, so I can make Shaykhianu on it. Yeah, it's interesting because I would make Shaykhian on a tie, which may not cost that much money, let's say, but on an everyday shirt, I may not say Shaykhian because it's not a chashuv, because it's everyday clothing. Is everyone clear on the three categories? Do you see that? The first category that is inflexible, that is on special days. The second category, which depends on if I'm eating or if I'm, the fruit. Is it a new fruit or is it not a new fruit? If it's new, it makes Shaykhianu. And then the third, almost entirely subjective, and that is a significant item of clothing that gives me joy. Okay, with that, sweet, wonderful people, we conclude. It's a fascinating, beautiful bracha, Shaykhianu. I'll conclude with a blessing for all of us. Yehi Ratzon for all of us, that we should merit during the course of this special year of Machon, we should be merit many, many times to feel that this is a Shaykhianu moment, that I'm just grateful to God that I'm right here, right now. I should have many Shaykhianu moments, and more than that, that I should be blessed to be able to make Shaykhianu v'kimanu v'yanu many, many times. Yishar koach to all of you.